As the Axioth descended through Earth's atmosphere, its sleek black hull shimmered in the sunlight, casting an ominous shadow over the planet below. It was a ship unlike any human had ever seen, massive, foreboding, and bristling with weapons that could turn an entire city into rubble with a single shot. Despite its beauty, there was a coldness to its design, a clear message. We are here to dominate. On the ground, Earth's defense systems were scrambling. The United Nations had only a handful of spacefaring vessels left after years of rebuilding. Military assets were scarce, with most nations still recovering from the disasters of the last World War. But they had something the Union did not anticipate: determination. When the Axioth arrived, humanity did not cower. General James Walker, commander of Earth's remaining fleet, had seen the reports. The Axioth was an advanced warship, a relic of 1,000 years of Union military dominance. He had no illusions about their chances. With a tactical retreat, he could save more lives, preserve what was left of Earth's military power. But he knew that retreating would mark Earth as weak, and humanity's future would be controlled by an empire that cared little for their existence. "We make our stand here," Walker said, his voice calm but firm, as he addressed his command team. With little more than a few dozen battered ships, mostly civilian vessels retrofitted into combat-ready crafts, Walker led the charge. They weren't equipped to win, they weren't even equipped to fight. But they would face the invaders head-on. For hours, Earth's makeshift fleet engaged in a series of desperate attacks. Laser fire lit up the sky as human pilots, untrained but fearless, used every trick they could think of to avoid the Axioth's devastating energy weapons. In the chaos of the battle, a civilian pilot named Jake Thompson, who had once been an aerospace engineer, found himself thrust into the heart of the conflict. His ship, a ramshackle fighter converted from an old cargo freighter, was far from the Union's standard of warfare, but Jake's eyes weren't on the battle. His eyes were fixed on the glowing weak point of the Axioth's underbelly, an exhaust port that flickered ever so slightly with each pulse of its weapons. Jake made a decision in that instant. He would go down fighting. With no time to reconsider, he maneuvered his ship into a tight dive, dodging the Axioth's weapons by inches, and fired everything he had. A single shot, a perfect strike, tore through the Axioth's reactor. The mighty warship exploded in a shower of sparks and debris, leaving a trail of fire across the sky. It wasn't a victory, but it was a message. Humanity would not be subjugated. The explosion of the Axioth sent shockwaves through space, both literal and metaphorical. On Earth, the impact was immediate. The Union fleet, though damaged, quickly regrouped, but the victory, if it could even be called that, had sparked something far deeper than just a military reaction. It had ignited the spirit of defiance. Humanity had always been a species on the edge, struggling between self-doubt and self-determination. But in that brief moment, when Jake Thompson had plunged into the heart of the Axioth, humanity had spoken a single, clear message to the galaxy: we will never bow down. But it came at a steep cost. The Union retaliated with brutal force. Within hours, the Axioth's destruction had reached the ears of the Galactic Council, and the order was given for Earth's complete annihilation. The remaining Union ships, numbering in the hundreds, launched a devastating orbital bombardment, targeting every major city on the planet. The cities of New York, Moscow, Beijing, and Rio were nothing more than smouldering craters within hours. Earth's communications networks collapsed, and the world was plunged into chaos. In the midst of this devastation, the human race was given an agonizing choice: surrender or die. General James Walker had never known defeat, not in all his years of service, But now, leading what remained of Earth's forces in a desperate defense, he felt the crushing weight of despair. There was no military power left to speak of, only the remnants of human will. As Earth's cities fell and populations were wiped out by Union bombardment, the world's survivors fled underground, abandoning their homes for the relative safety of bunkers and hidden military installations. But even in this dark hour, Earth's fighters refused to stop. Dr. Olivia Ward, an engineer from a small town in Ohio who had spent her life designing civilian aircraft, became one of the key figures in Earth's resistance. She joined forces with the remnants of Earth's best military minds to work out a plan, a countermeasure. There was little hope left, but there was still ingenuity. Human minds could craft weapons, could turn the tides with a single idea, and that was what Earth's survivors clung to now. As the Union fleet reoriented its forces for a final strike, Rachel Mitchell, one of the few remaining commanders of Earth's fleet, stood before her battered forces. Her voice crackled over the comm system, weak but filled with defiance. "This isn't over. It won't be over until we decide it is." And with that, humanity prepared for what seemed like the last fight they would ever have. The world was broken, but the human will remained unshattered. As the Union's final wave of assault ships loomed on the horizon, Earth's resistance forces had rallied together in what could only be described as a last-ditch stand. The world had been reduced to rubble, and what remained of Earth's population huddled in underground bunkers, hoping that a miracle would deliver them from extinction. But in these dark times, it wasn't miracles that humanity needed. It was the grit and ingenuity that had defined them from the start. General James Walker had long since abandoned any hope of an easy victory. The Union's forces had all but crushed Earth's infrastructure, leaving behind only scorched earth and the broken remnants of human society. But he refused to let his people be extinguished without a fight. Humanity's spirit was its greatest weapon, and that would be their last defense. On the surface, the human resistance had fallen back to the underground command center in Denver, a subterranean facility designed to withstand the worst of a nuclear strike. It was here, deep beneath the earth, that the final plans to counter the Union's overwhelming superiority were being drawn up. Dr. Olivia Ward, now a key strategist for Earth's resistance, was hard at work, assembling a plan to develop a series of electromagnetic pulse, EMP bombs, designed to cripple the Union's advanced weapons systems and disrupt their communication networks. But even as Earth's defenders rallied around these technological developments, a shadow loomed within their ranks, one that no one saw coming. Dr. David West, one of the most brilliant neuroscientists on Earth and a former key figure in the development of Earth's anti-Union strategies, had been captured during a previous raid on Union forces. His knowledge of human-computer interfacing and cyber warfare was critical to the Resistance's plans. But now, with Earth's only hope resting on these very strategies, something had changed. Dr. West's sudden disappearance from his holding cell in Denver raised suspicions. Initially, it was dismissed as a simple escape attempt, but as strange glitches began to appear in Earth's communication systems, malfunctions that only someone with deep access to the network could trigger, paranoia set in. General Walker, already under immense pressure, began questioning everyone, even his closest allies. A team of elite soldiers, including Captain Rachel Mitchell, was dispatched to investigate. It wasn't long before they uncovered the truth. Dr. West had not escaped. He had been recruited. His mind had been compromised by the Union's advanced psychological warfare methods, turning him into an unwilling traitor. West had been feeding the Union vital information about Earth's last-ditch efforts to fight back. Worse yet, The plans for the EMP bombs, which could disrupt Union weapons long enough to level the playing field, were now in the hands of their enemies. Rachel knew what this meant. Earth's final defense was compromised, and the traitor was closer than they thought. As the rebellion's greatest mind turned against them, Earth's survival depended on the boldness of its leaders. They could not afford a mistake. Every second counted. The revelation of Dr. David West's betrayal sent ripples of distrust throughout the human resistance. With the EMP plans compromised, Earth's fighters now faced not only an external enemy, but an invisible one hiding within their own ranks. The clock was ticking, and the Union's forces were nearing their final assault. Yet, amidst the chaos and paranoia, there was a flicker of hope. The Kreth. The Kreth were an ancient warrior race, once subjugated by the Union, but now scattered across the galaxy in pockets of resistance. They were a species forged in the fires of oppression, fierce, relentless, and eager for revenge. The Kreth had a long history of defying their masters, and now Earth needed them more than ever. Captain Rachel Mitchell, resolute and unyielding, was chosen to lead a secret mission to the Kreth homeworld Oscar. It was a dangerous gamble. If the Kreth could be convinced to join the fight, their battle-hardened forces could tip the scales in humanity's favour. If not, the war was lost. Rachel's team, consisting of Lieutenant Marcus Shaw, a seasoned tactician, and Sergeant Elena Diaz, a former Special Forces operative, embarked on the perilous journey through enemy-held space. The journey was long, fraught with danger at every turn, as they navigated Union-controlled territories, evading detection with every move. Upon arrival at Oscar, Rachel and her team were greeted not with the warmth of an ally, but with cold suspicion. The Kreth had been betrayed before. Their leaders, Gorath, a towering figure of fearsome strength and sharp intellect, was hesitant to offer any support. The Kreth had their own score to settle with the Union, but they had no interest in involving themselves in a distant war that seemed doomed to failure. "You come to us broken, your planet in ruin," Gorath growled, his eyes narrowing as he towered over Rachel. "What do you expect from us? You can't even protect your own. Why should we fight your fight?" Rachel knew she had little time to convince him. She didn't offer empty promises or flowery words. Instead, she spoke of humanity's resilience, of their capacity to endure, to rise from ashes. She spoke of their shared history with the Kreth, their mutual struggle for freedom. And then, in a final, desperate move, she made a simple appeal. "If we fall, the Union will not stop. You will be next. No one will be left to fight for you." Gorath, silent for a long moment, finally spoke. "Then let us see if your people are worthy of this fight. If you truly have the fire in you, prove it." With those words, the Kreth reluctantly agreed to an alliance. But Gorath's condition was clear. They would not fight for Earth. They would fight with Earth. Humanity had to prove itself. The spark of rebellion had ignited, and now the fire would spread. With the Kreth now reluctantly allied with humanity, Earth's resistance gained a significant advantage. The union of two races, both scarred by the Union's tyranny, created an alliance that was both unpredictable and powerful. The Kreth brought with them advanced weaponry, brutal tactics, and an ancient warrior's sense of pride in battle. Humanity, on the other hand, offered innovation and sheer determination. Together, they formed a new force that could strike back at the heart of the Union, the heart of their oppression. Zalthar Prime. The strategy was bold. An all-out assault on the Union's capital, where their leadership was centralized. Destroying Zalthar Prime would destabilize the entire Union war effort and cripple their ability to control the galaxy. But the risks were immense. Zalthar Prime was one of the most heavily fortified planets in the known galaxy. It was the Union's crown jewel, surrounded by fleets of warships and legions of elite soldiers. The defense grids around the planet were so advanced that any attempt to breach them was deemed suicidal. General James Walker, the seasoned leader of Earth's forces, knew this. But the window for a successful strike was closing. The Union had already begun moving its command center to Zalthar Prime, preparing for the final phase of their assault on Earth. They were relentless, and if they were allowed to regroup, Earth and the Kreth would be crushed under the full weight of their military might. "We may not have another chance," Walker said grimly as he surveyed the plans for the assault, his voice filled with the gravitas of a man who knew the cost of failure. "We strike now, or we lose everything." The combined forces of humanity and the Kreth gathered in secret on the outskirts of Union-controlled space. Ships were retrofitted with Kreth technology, offering a surprising edge against Union defenses. The Axioth's destruction had given the Resistance a foothold in the Union's network of space lanes, and the new weapon humanity had developed, the hypervelocity railgun, was ready for its first test. With this weapon, Earth could punch through even the Union's most advanced shields. The night before the final strike, Rachel Mitchell stood at the helm of her command ship, Valor's Edge, staring out at the vastness of space. The stars seemed distant, cold. But humanity had never been more united in purpose. Tomorrow, they would take the fight directly to the heart of the Union. "We won't just win this war," Rachel muttered to herself, her resolve hardening. "We'll make sure they never forget what happens when they underestimate us." The assault began at dawn. The Union's outer defenses fell first, decimated by the combined firepower of Earth's fleet and Kreth fighters. But as they neared Zalthar Prime, the true scale of the Union's strength became apparent. The planet's massive defensive grids activated, sending out waves of laser fire and swarming missile pods that rained down on the human Kreth armada. Rachel, commanding the charge, knew this would be the hardest battle they had ever fought. The fate of both worlds rested on this single moment, and there was no turning back. The assault on Zalthar Prime had begun with a rush of victory. Humanity and the Kreth, united by desperation, had shattered the Union's outer defenses and broken through their first line of resistance. For a moment, it seemed as if Earth's unlikely alliance with the Kreth might actually have a chance at succeeding. But as the battle raged on, and the combined fleets neared the planet's defensive perimeter, an insidious threat revealed itself. General James Walker had barely finished briefing his command staff when the first signs of sabotage appeared. Communications between the fleets began to fail, vital intel was lost, and strange discrepancies began appearing in the targeting systems. The Union's counterattacks grew more precise, their defenses more resilient, as if someone was feeding them critical information. At first, the sabotage was chalked up to the chaos of battle, a normal byproduct of warfare. But as the situation worsened, suspicion began to fester among Earth's command. When Captain Rachel Mitchell personally ordered a scan of the fleet's internal communication network, the truth hit like a punch to the gut. Dr. Olivia Ward, the brilliant engineer who had designed Earth's countermeasures, was the traitor. Dr. Ward had been working behind the scenes, quietly feeding the Union details about the fleet's movements, the Kreth's tactics, and even the location of key Rebel installations. Worse still, evidence suggested she had been in contact with General Kozar, the ruthless Union commander who had led the initial invasion of Earth. It wasn't just a betrayal, it was a calculated plan to ensure Earth's downfall from within. Rachel felt the weight of the discovery pressing down on her like a vice. Olivia had been one of the first to join the resistance, a symbol of Earth's resolve to survive. Her intellect and engineering prowess had been crucial to the success of their campaign. But now it was clear that Olivia had been manipulating them all along. The truth sent shockwaves through the ranks. The Kreth, already distrustful of humans, saw the betrayal as a confirmation of their worst fears. That humanity was too divided, too weak to be trusted in such a critical alliance. "We can't afford this," Rachel muttered, pacing in the command center, her voice tight with fury. "We can't afford another failure." In an emergency operation, a small elite team led by Lieutenant Marcus Shaw was dispatched to capture Dr. Ward before she could deliver any more information to the Union. But Olivia's network of spies within the Resistance was vast, and by the time the team arrived at her safe house, she had already vanished. The damage had been done. Rachel knew that without Olivia's knowledge, and with the Union now armed with inside information, their chances of breaching Zalthar Prime's final defenses were dwindling. The planet's orbital shields were growing stronger by the hour, and soon they would be impenetrable. "Time's running out," Marcus said, his voice grim. "We need to find her. We need her, alive." But Rachel's mind was already on the next phase of the operation. They would fight on, betrayal or not. Earth had no other choice. And now they would need to do it without the very person who had been their greatest hope. The discovery of Dr. Olivia Ward's betrayal hit Earth's forces like a thunderclap. The shock reverberated throughout the ranks, shaking the fragile unity between the human and Kreth forces. As the battle to breach Zalthar Prime's orbital defenses escalated, the sabotage seemed to have crippled their coordinated efforts. The Union's countermeasures were now more effective, their warships more aggressive. Earth's fleet, already outmatched, was beginning to show signs of weakness. Captain Rachel Mitchell stood in the command center of Valor's Edge, staring at the glowing holographic map of Zalthar Prime. It showed the planet's fortified orbit, bristling with defense arrays that now seemed all but impenetrable. There were only two options left: retreat and live to fight another day, or make a final, suicidal push and hope that something, anything, could tip the balance. "I've got an idea," Lieutenant Marcus Shaw said, breaking the tense silence. His voice was edged with desperation, but beneath it lay the steady determination that had kept him alive through every impossible mission. "It's a long shot, but we might still have a chance." Rachel turned to him, her eyes narrowed. "What do you have?" Shaw activated a new set of coordinates on the holomap, focusing on a small moon orbiting Zalthar Prime. "If we can disable the planetary defense grid long enough, just long enough, we can get a strike team onto the surface. If we plant explosives at the heart of their command center, we can break the Union's grip on the planet," Rachel finished for him. It was a bold plan, one that required her fleet to split its forces, distracting the Union long enough for a small team to infiltrate the planet's surface. It was risky. Too risky. But the only alternative was to retreat and admit defeat, which was not an option. "We'll need everyone," she said, her voice firm. "We split the fleet. Half will launch a diversionary assault on the defense arrays while the other half, including the Kreth, will break through to the surface. We're going to do this in one shot." But even as Rachel was making preparations for the mission, something gnawed at the back of her mind. She knew the stakes. She knew this was a do-or-die operation, but there was no ignoring the fact that the Valor's Edge was the heart of their fleet, and if she couldn't protect it, the entire battle would be lost. "Are you ready?" Marcus asked, his eyes meeting hers with a quiet understanding. Rachel exhaled slowly. "We're all ready. We fight to the last breath." At that moment, the alarms blared through the command center, signaling the Union was preparing to launch a full-scale counteroffensive. There was no time to waste. "Prepare to launch," Rachel ordered. "This is the last stand." Earth's fleet began its final assault on Zalthar Prime, a desperate, all-or-nothing move that would decide the fate of their world. The battle over Zalthar Prime reached its bloody crescendo. Earth's fleet, battered and fragmented, had divided into two halves, one to fight and distract the Union forces long enough for the other to break through the planet's defenses. The stars around Zalthar Prime became a swirling mass of explosions, trails of debris, and the twisted wreckage of ships torn apart by laser fire. Each passing moment felt like a final countdown, a desperate race against time. Captain Rachel Mitchell stood at the Bridge of Valor's edge, overseeing the chaos unfolding before her. The Union's retaliatory strikes had been brutal. Earth's ships were outmatched, outgunned, but they were not out of heart. Even the Kreth, once so wary of humans, fought alongside them with a ferocity that had earned them the respect of every Earth pilot. The enemy's shields began to weaken, just as Marcus Shaw had predicted, but they weren't out of the fight yet. "Shields are at 30%, Captain." Lieutenant Elena Diaz shouted, her voice barely audible over the roar of alarms. "We can't hold much longer." Marcus added from his station, "The Union's reinforcing their command center on the surface. If we don't act now, they'll consolidate their power." Rachel's grip tightened on the arm of her chair. "Prepare the ground assault. We're going in." As the diversionary forces drew more of the Union fleet's attention, Valor's Edge and a small strike force of Kreth warships broke through the defense grid, slamming into the atmosphere of Zalthar Prime. The fleet took heavy fire, but the shields held for just long enough. In a violent, breathtaking dive, Rachel's team entered the atmosphere, dodging fire from Union anti-air turrets as they neared the surface. On the ground, the last remnants of Earth's commandos, joined by a small band of Kreth warriors, landed in a heavily fortified zone just outside the Union command center. They fought through waves of enemy troops, each step bringing them closer to the core of the Union's control system. Their goal was clear: plant explosives at the center of the Union's military infrastructure, severing their hold on Zalthar Prime once and for all. Inside the command center, Rachel and her team fought their way through security and into the heart of the facility. Sweat stung her eyes, her pulse raced, but she knew this was their moment. As the countdown on the explosive charges began, her breath caught in her throat. "Get out now," Marcus screamed, pulling her toward the exit. The explosion was deafening. The building shook as the Union's central hub crumbled into rubble. For a heartbeat, everything seemed to freeze. And then, the shockwave of destruction ripped through the planet's surface, and the Union's command structure fell apart. Zalthar Prime was theirs. The Union's grip on the galaxy was broken. Back in orbit, the Union fleet, crippled and disoriented, began retreating in disarray. The combined forces of humanity and the Kreth had achieved the impossible. In the aftermath of the destruction, as Earth's surviving forces gathered around the shattered remains of Zalthar Prime, Rachel Mitchell stood tall, watching the smoke rise over the battlefield. It was not a victory in the traditional sense. So many lives had been lost, so much had been destroyed. But it was something far more important. It was hope. The war was not over, but the Union's reign of terror had been dealt a crippling blow. Humanity and its allies had shown the galaxy that they were not to be underestimated. And as the first rays of sunlight broke through the storm clouds over Zalthar Prime, Rachel whispered to herself, "This is just the beginning."